So there's several amendments that are basically being breached right now. The first, the second, the fourth. You can look up these and see what they're about and try to dig into it. There's some other ones that it touches as well, but certainly, freedom of speech is a big one. There's a couple reasons why this case is problematic for freedom of speech in America. The first one is, like I said, there was no evidence of any wrongdoing, but what happened is the DOJ, they went and they looked at tweets. This is real. They literally went back and looked at the tweets that Keonne and Bill were putting out. So Twitter is an open platform. We're supposed to have freedom of speech. And they went back and they found some tweets that they didn't like. And they started to make up stuff about those tweets. And I'm not going to get into the details unless you want me to dig further. But it was just like basically joking branding tweets like, come on in, everybody from the Russian oligarchs. Come on in and use this.
Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to the Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Support the forum. Go to buymeacoffee.com/fountainheadforum. Thank you. Welcome to the Party Pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 405. I'm talking to Jesse Tevelow. We are going to talk about the court case involving Samourai Wallet, the two gentlemen involved in this case who are basically going to jail for programming, and that's their crime, programming. Other than that, they haven't done anything. So that's I've covered a few crypto court cases here, and I think this is another one that I hope the public knows about. How are you, Jesse?
Doing fine. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me on the show. I think you just reached out on X and said, hey, let's hit record. And I said, let's do it. So I commend you. I hope more people do the same thing. And I want to get the word out as well. So thanks for giving me the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Can you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Sure. My name's Jesse. I have been in the space, meaning the Bitcoin crypto space, for over a decade. I've started multiple companies. I've launched tokens. I've done the NFT stuff. I've been sort of everywhere in the industry. I used to be helping with fundraising companies. I've kind of done it all. And, I started my first company when I was 23. My first company was a game company. And I've always been into entrepreneurship. I've always been into bleeding edge technology. And in this case, after being a fan of Bitcoin for so long, and most recently I've kind of become a Bitcoin maxi, a Bitcoin thought leader. I'm on X Spaces a lot. I'm doing a lot of just leadership and trying to get the word out about how Bitcoin works and why we need it, how money's broken. And here comes this Samourai Wallet case, and I had heard about it a little bit, and I know it had been ongoing, and Keonne and his partner got raided April 24th, 2024. So they had been dealing with it for coming up on 2 years, but it was really coming to a head back a few months ago. November, they got their sentence, I think, and now they're both in jail. So today is actually, as we're recording this, Bill, Keonne's partner, is going to jail. He's surrendering himself to jail today, and Keonne's been in jail for about 2 weeks now. So they are both serving their sentences, and like you said, they did nothing wrong. We can get into the details of the case, and you can ask whatever questions you want, and I'll do my best to answer. I have been, researching the case and talking directly to Keonne and his wife now, Lauren, pretty much every day, all the time, about everything. So I know a good amount, and I'm here to just try to help get these guys home because they really should not be behind bars.
Yes, and they do have a website, Bill and I believe that's billandkeonne.com or
billandkeonne.org.
Okay, billandkeonne.org.
That's right.
And I'm having trouble getting to it.
We can put it in the show notes, and I can make sure that we have it for everybody. But it should be, I believe, billandkeonne.org, and it should take you to the petition, an option to do the petition and also to donate. But if that's not right, if I'm for some reason I'm saying it wrong, the other way to get there is Keonne's X page. It's on his X platform.
Yeah.
So that's the best way to.
And Keonne is spelled Keone, correct?
Keonne. So there's two N's.
Oh, there's two N's. Okay.
That might have
That's the issue. There's two N's. Okay, yes.
That's right.
Okay, here we are. BillandKeonne.com. Yes. Sign the
Perfect.
petition, other things. Yes. And I always think, it's always important to put real names on these cases. I think that's vital that we do that. Yeah, and it's Keonne Rodriguez, and it's William Lonergan Hill. It's very interesting. Actually had another guy on this show named Bill Hill, and he was working with the pouch. I think it's a different Bill Hill.
Well, those are two pretty common names there, but
yeah. Common is there, but he's in the Philippines, promoting Bitcoin in the Philippines. So I'll have to look out. I don't think it is the same guy though. I don't think he was this old.
Yeah, Bill is this one Bill that we're talking about, Keonne and Bill. Bill is in his late 60s. There's a picture of him on the site there, keonneandbill.org, and you can see the whole story there. They've done a great job. They're updating that website regularly now as well. So that's the main place to look for information.
Oh, and Keonne's going to the federal prison, and there's a federal prison in Morgantown, West Virginia.
He's there. He's there. I talked to him.
From my home turf is what I'm saying. Yes.
Oh, where are you?
I was born in the northern panhandle of West Virginia. I'm not there now, but I certainly know Morgantown. I didn't realize there was a federal prison there. But anyway, it's most famous for the home of the university. So anyway, so here we are. And so Samourai Wallet, can you, I always assume that there are a lot of audience out here does not know anything about cryptocurrency. Well, what is a wallet and what is Samourai Wallet?
Sure. I'll just try to speak again, like I said, generally. I do agree with you. I think it's important to try to get to the biggest audience possible we can with this. So Bitcoin, if you haven't heard, is a new form of money. That's the way I like to describe it. It is money that is not owned by any government. It's not issued by any government. It was created by, like Keonne, a software engineer, a programmer, Satoshi Nakamoto. I won't go into all the details, but I think most people have heard of Bitcoin at this point. And one of the major things about Bitcoin that's so amazing is that, you don't have someone sort of tied to it, right? So you can just transact and you can do business with somebody, or you can give someone some Bitcoin, and there shouldn't really be anybody with their hands on it, right? There shouldn't be a bank or a third party, certainly not a government, looking at all those transactions and surveying everything. And that was, it was starting to get to the point where now the governments are releasing what we call these digital currencies, CBDCs, which are basically stable coins that are going to be pegged to their US dollar currency. So the governments are really starting to try now to use this technology and to control this technology. And so Bitcoin, like other cryptocurrencies, you need a place to exchange. You need a way to transact, right? And you need a place to keep your currency. And so there's what we call digital wallets, okay? And that's where it's basically an account or a place where you can hold custody of your asset. In this case, we're talking about Bitcoin. And so Samourai was a Bitcoin wallet. It was just for Bitcoin. It was software that was built so that users like you and me, anybody listening to this could own Bitcoin, they could possess Bitcoin, and they could keep that Bitcoin in the Bitcoin wallet that was produced by Samourai Wallet. Now, the thing to know here that is really important is that Samourai Wallet and Keonne and Bill, the developers of Samourai Wallet, built the software in a very specific way such that Bill and Keonne never touched any Bitcoin. The Bitcoin was always in the custody of the user. This is critical to understand. This was the innovation. They basically built a wallet where the Bitcoin was not in the custody of the creators. It was not in the custody of Bill and Keonne at any time. So I knew that if I was using Samourai Wallet and my Bitcoin was on Samourai Wallet, I knew that even Bill and Keonne never had custody of it. It was always in my custody because I always kept my keys. And so I think that's one of the main elements to it. They developed a couple different feature sets and products. One was called Whirlpool, and Whirlpool was a coin join technology that allowed basically multiple people to put their Bitcoin into a bucket and then have people be unable to trace where that Bitcoin was going. So it was a group effort to make it private and to make it untraceable, where you were putting your Bitcoin and where you were trading your Bitcoin. And the government, they didn't like that. They didn't like that one bit. And so that is the crux of this whole story. The Samourai Wallet story is a story about privacy. It's about ownership. You know, not too long ago, before we had digital currency, before we had credit cards, before we had any form of quasi-digital or any kind of digital money, we just had paper money, right? Everybody just had dollars and
Yes.
cents in our pockets, in our wallets, and the government did not know what we were doing with those pieces of paper. When I went to the barber shop and I gave my barber some dollar bills, the government wasn't looking at that transaction and wasn't tracing where that barber then spent my dollars and put those up.
Yes.
I mean, starts to get very big brother, very scary with the surveillance that they're going to do. And that's what's coming with the CBDCs, with the Genius Act, with the stable coins. That's what Keonne and Bill were creating an opportunity as a different option for with Bitcoin. And so the DOJ, the government, came after him and they shut them down.
Yeah, and that's what we'd call a mixer. And in layman's terms, I like to put it this way: imagine you've got 50 people, and they all put $1 into a bowl, and then an hour later they all come back and they pull $1 out of a bowl.
Yep, you don't know which dollar belongs to.
They're not going to pull out there's a good chance they're not going to pull out the same dollar bill that they put in.
Correct.
They're going to have a dollar bill, so you don't know where those dollar bills, who put in what dollar bill, and you don't know who's taking out what dollar bill.
That's a great way to describe what the technology was doing. And the problem, so people listening can try to understand, is that the government literally wanted to know, where is every single dollar going? Yeah. Where is it coming from? Where is it going? And they wanted to track every single transaction.
So I don't think they got in trouble for making the wallet. Really, the mixer is what got them. I mean, because people are making software Bitcoin wallets all the time.
Yes. So, right. There's examples in the case where you can look at other folks that were building the same software. The thing that Keonne and Bill were able to do is they were able to build it in such a way that they were theoretically still within the reasoning of the law. They were within the guidelines of FinCEN because they had lawyers. They were looking at the guidelines and they built it, again, with non-custody. There was no custody. Therefore, they did not need to do KYC AML, which is something else we could get into. But they basically built it in a way that it didn't need to, it was meant to be built so that it was untraceable. They succeeded in doing that. And, there was no, Keonne and Bill had no bad intentions. They weren't doing any criminal activity. There was nothing that the DOJ could even find that they were doing, but they didn't like the fact that they couldn't track the Bitcoin with their Whirlpool product. So.
And again, for the layman out there, KYC is know your customer, AML is anti-money laundering. So again, we've got this case, Jesse, it really bothers me because this opens up a can of worms that we're going to outlaw code. We're going to make coding a criminal offense, and code by itself is really no different from words on paper or speech. I think code is a form of free speech. So if you're going to outlaw, I don't know if anybody's tried the First Amendment angle, but that seems like what people should try here. So
yes, so there's several amendments that are basically being breached right now. The first, the second, the fourth. You can look up these and see what they're about and try to dig into it. There's some other ones that it touches as well, but certainly, freedom of speech is a big one. There's a couple reasons why this case is problematic for freedom of speech in America. The first one is, like I said, there was no evidence of any wrongdoing, but what happened is the DOJ, they went and they looked at tweets. This is real. They literally went back and looked at the tweets that Keonne and Bill were putting out. So Twitter is an open platform. We're supposed to have freedom of speech. And they went back and they found some tweets that they didn't like. And they started to make up stuff about those tweets. And I'm not going to get into the details unless you want me to dig further, but it was just like basically joking branding tweets like, come on in, everybody from the Russian oligarchs, come on in and use this, because there would be something about, the Russians not being having stuff being tracked. And so again, they were doing funny tweets. They were software developers building stuff for privacy, and the government was able to then indict them just based off the tweets. So there was no evidence. They weren't able to find any criminal activity. They just saw some tweets and said, hey, we don't like what you're doing. And then the FBI raided them. So that the FBI came to Keonne's house and Bill's house, coordinated effort, probably spent millions of dollars. They had armed guys with guns. They had, laser pointers on Keonne and his wife. I mean, the whole thing. And we're supposed to have freedom of speech in this country. So the fact that the government can really, knock down your door like that and just throw you in jail for something you said online, we talk about it happening in Europe, but this is an example of clearly it happening here in the United States. And then real quick for the other points you were making, this case calls into question the ability for programmers to create anything. Because if you create anything as a programmer and somebody bad uses your software for something bad, then you could go to jail like Keonne. So there have been people making comparisons. One that I like is it's like if a bad guy used Microsoft Excel, right?
Yeah.
It's like then the people who created Microsoft Excel, Bill Gates, anyone over there at Microsoft, they'd have to go to jail because a bad guy was using the spreadsheet software that they created, right? It makes no sense.
He doesn't use spreadsheet software. Yeah.
Right. So you can't punish the creator of infrastructure or software technology. You have to, if you're going to put people in jail, you have to put the people in jail that are actually doing bad things.
Or the analogy I like to use is that, somebody shoots child porn and you're going to go prosecute the camera company.
Exactly. Right. You can come up with any example you want, right? But it's just like you can't put the people in jail who created the tools. That doesn't make any sense.
Because every tool, almost any tool can be used for something bad, and almost every tool is used for something that that it wasn't initially intended for.
Absolutely.
I mean, sometimes I use Palmolive to get stains out of clothing. I mean, it was sold as a dishwasher.
You can carry the logic as far as you can carry the logic, and at the end of the day, if this precedent stands, nobody can create anything anymore because you would be in fear that you would go to jail for creating it.
Jesse. Sometimes I wonder, and maybe, do you think we'll get to a point where people in the crypto space just give up and go and just go abroad and don't even try to comply with American law and just
absolutely
say I'm going to live outside America and just say the heck with this?
Absolutely. It's happening all the time. Yeah. I've considered it. I mean, I've been in the industry for 10 years. I mean, I was debanked. I was shut down by Signature Bank just for trying to run a fund that was investing in companies that were, doing things in crypto. I mean, it's been ridiculous for over a decade. Everybody already knows about Project Choke Point. Lots and lots of entrepreneurs have been choked out. This is the most egregious example that I've seen. I think, obviously, you have Ross Ulbricht, which was absolutely horrendous, and you have a lot of other cases happening right now. This one with Keonne and Bill is my focus because I think for me, it's the one that hit me the hardest, and I also believe that it hits the American people from so many different angles. This particular case and the specifics of it. And I think with everything else happening, with all the fraud in this country, with our inability to balance a budget, with all the government issues that we have, and the unclear regulations and the lack of movement in terms of adopting these technologies, to me, there's no surprise why this hasn't gotten more. There's no surprise that it hasn't gotten attention, but I think it should have more attention. And my goal is to get this in front of Donald Trump as quickly as possible to get these guys pardoned. Trump did mention it in a press conference briefly, I think last month, but we're really going to push hard now in January here to bring these guys home.
Can you talk? What is Project Choke Point?
Project Choke Point was, it's been talked about now by lots of different people, including David Sachs, who's in the administration. But just the Biden administration sort of unleashed this strategic initiative to shut down any entrepreneur, any company, any business that was doing anything related to crypto, Bitcoin, privacy, like any of these things. There were a lot of things that didn't hit the media, that didn't make it into the mainstream. And it had been going on for a long time, but it really ramped up, I would say, 2020, along with COVID, they were trying to really shut everything down. And I can't remember who it was. I think it was one of the guys from Andreessen Horowitz who was mentioning it, and it kind of the word got out, and now it's sort of like a known thing that the government can literally just shut off your bank account, and that's what they were doing. They were just shutting off bank accounts. And Jack Mallers, I think, also recently talked about it, how he was debanked. He was part of Project Choke Point. And, it still is going on today. Like, this is an example here with the DOJ out of South District of New York that did this prosecution against Keonne. And this is sort of like Project Choke Point type of behavior, where it's just nonsensical trying to get people to stop doing the work that they're doing.
Yeah, and this is the whole point. I could get kicked off my Ameritrade account. I could get kicked off of Facebook. I could get kicked off Twitter, but I can't get kicked off Bitcoin. I can't get kicked off Monero. I can't get kicked off Cardano. I mean, if I have, it's just like having the cash. I mean, unless somebody can get, physical access to it, they can't get it.
Well, here's the thing.
Yeah.
You should be very scared, and so should every other American and every other Bitcoiner, because, they basically indicted Keonne, threw him in jail, and then they made one of his bail requirements that he could not transact in crypto, including Bitcoin, or that would be considered breaking the requirements of bail, and he would be, I think, hit with some massive fine, or there'd be some big penalty. So, they can do these things where, they just try to indict you, they try to put you behind bars, they try to create these threats. It's all threats, interrogation, control. And so, yeah, I mean, this is a direct threat to Bitcoin, to Bitcoiners, to privacy, to freedom of speech, to all the different things that we kind of hold dear as Americans, to private property. They came into his home without any evidence of anything and just searched his whole entire house, turned it upside down, sent a bunch of drones in. I mean, it's out of control. So yes, Bitcoin is freedom money, but only if we can keep it. Just like they say with the Republic, we have our Republic if we can keep it.
Yeah, certainly. There's been a lot. So I mean, do you think? What do you think Trump is trying to accomplish? I mean, it's hard to figure out what his goal is. I mean, I don't think he's friendly to sound currency. But,
look, I'm not going to pretend that I know what's going on in Trump's head or what he's being told by the team around him. But what I can tell you is I agree with everybody else with me who's trying to get these guys back home, is that I believe that Trump is the kind of man who understands this, because the same group was going after him. This is the same group, SDNY out of New York, Southern District of New York. This is the DOJ that was going after him. And these are Biden. This is from the Biden era. I think Clinton appointed the judge, who's a very bad judge, who is known for just, having ridiculous rulings, Judge Cote. And so all of this stuff, you can just see it. You can see how it lines up. You can see the corruption. And I think Donald Trump, if he was able to see a few of these details of the case, or he had somebody who was close to him showing him these aspects of the case, I think he would quickly be able to discern that there is no corruption here and that Keonne and Bill should be home immediately. So he, again, like I said, he said Keonne Rodriguez's name. The president of the United States was saying Keonne Rodriguez's name last month. So I have my own sources. There's a bunch of people working on this behind the scenes, and there's some really amazing people. And my information is that they are aware of it. I don't know what that means in terms of how high on a priority list or the reality of it getting done on any particular time frame. But to me, I'm hopeful that they know about it. It's on the radar. And at this point, for everybody listening, I just think it's about numbers, and we're trying to get the petition signed. It's really easy to do it. It doesn't cost anything. It's safe. I did it. I hate signing stuff, by the way. And this is the one thing I did in life to be like, look, I'm going online. I'm putting my name on this thing. And you can do it anonymously as well. So we need to have those numbers on the petition for Trump to pay attention, is my thinking here. And that comes from feedback directly from Ross, because we've been in contact with Ross and also Ross's mother, Lynn Albrecht, and she keeps saying, look, just we have to continue to get the petition signed. So that's one of our biggest priorities right now for Donald Trump to see it.
You mentioned Judge Cote. How do you spell that name?
I believe it's just COTE. You can look up the details of the case, but she's like, I think 79 years old, very old, notoriously placed into these cases. She was very suspiciously put onto the case directly when the they were going to get the they had motions in the pretrial that they wanted to get looked at to disprove a lot of the things in the case, and they had a lot of good material, and she basically just threw it out and said, nope, I don't care, doesn't matter, and she gave no explanation for anything. So she's been absolutely horrible. She should be disbarred. And it's
it looks like it's Denise Cote, COTE.
That might be it.
Okay, yeah, and she's 79 years old. And also David Sachs, that's SACKS. I've noticed also that David Sachs has some connections with Mr. Peter Thiel and, of course, Elon Musk. And, of course, Thiel's known for being involved with things like Palantir and other surveillance technologies. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, again, I don't have any details on anything behind the scenes for this type of stuff, but what I would say about David Sachs and the entire administration, at this point in my life, this is just me, I do not believe that the government can push this technology forward the way that regular people want to be able to use the software, right? So in such a way that people can actually use the software. So I just think the incentives don't line up properly. Now, Bitcoin is open source, right? Anybody can use it. That's why there's these sayings, Bitcoin is for friends, Bitcoin is for enemies, Bitcoin is for anybody. It's for everybody. Anybody can use it. You can't stop it, right? And so this is the kind of the war, the battle that we face right now in the world, really. Whether you're a citizen of any country, you're looking at your own currency, maybe if you have your own fiat currency, the US dollar or something else, and then you have this new money, which is freedom money called Bitcoin, but the governments are still trying to figure out how to wrangle all of this. So when you look at someone like David Sachs and you look at anybody else in the administration, Howard Lutnick, whoever it might be, Bo Hines was in there for a little while. Now he's not. Now he went private. I just think you have to kind of look toward the private sector. And I think entrepreneurs, in my opinion, are the people that are going to save us. That's why I'm fighting for this. I don't believe that the future of Bitcoin should rest in the hands of government officials. I think the future of Bitcoin should rest in the hand of creators and builders and entrepreneurs like Satoshi, who created it. So, look, I like David Sachs. I think I tend to get a good vibe from him. I think the administration understands that Bitcoin is going to be extremely valuable against the dollar. They get it. They know that the fixed supply of Bitcoin makes it unlike anything else in human history. I call Bitcoin the most exciting invention in human history. It's a once in a species moment. And I think the US government knows that. So look, I think it's a net positive probably for Bitcoin in the fact that we actually have some government officials that understand what this thing is. But I think the incentive structures for governments do not align well with the long-term, promise of Bitcoin, which to me is supposed to be freedom money, which is antithetical to a government because it's literally supposed to be the separation of money from state, right? That's what Bitcoin should offer us.
Yeah, that really is. And it's just interesting that now you have more and more people in government who are friends of Bitcoin, or at least pretending to be friends of Bitcoin. I mean,
that's what I mean. It's all incentive driven. As soon as you're in the political, I'll call it what it is, circus. Once you're in that political circus, you're playing the game. You're playing the incentives games of that circus. So you kind of have to take everything with a grain of salt in terms of, what the Bitcoin industry is doing or what's happening with the Bitcoin industry as it relates to governments, because they always have some other incentive or ulterior motive, right?
Yeah, I hear a lot of people say that they're just going to try to promote Tether or any other pegged or other coins that are pegged to currencies like and we've also got coins pegged to the euro, coins pegged to the Chinese currency, coins pegged to the Japanese yen. so that they're just trying to, but they're going to try to maybe use that, use some of the cryptocurrencies pegged to the dollar that are going to
Yeah, I
become
mean, think
more
about it.
powerful.
If the money is going to go digital, right, then you have to find a way to have your old system, which is paper money,
Yes.
go on to the new system, and that's all that this stuff is. This stable coin, all stable coins are, is it's a bridge
Yeah.
for the current people in power to try to bring their current currency, their paper money, into the new world. And they're realizing right now that they have an opportunity to actually not only do that, not only to bring people from their old paper money to their new digital money, but it gives them an unprecedented chance at another layer of surveillance like never before.
Yes.
And so that's what's happening. You're seeing Europe, and now you're starting to see the US, in my opinion, say, hey, we're going to go the surveillance route. We're going to offer currencies based off of our old money. We're going to peg it. Pegging just means that you're just going to match it. So $1 is $1 coin, right? And
Yeah.
so they're going to use that as a way to then create more surveillance where they can track it. The only type of money that gets you out of that problem is Bitcoin, right? So you can kind of see, if you really start to put all the pieces together, you can see why Keonne and Bill are in jail, and it's disgusting, right? It's absolutely disgusting. But it's time for the people to stand up and to really make noise and let Donald Trump know, like, we're not going to allow this, right? Bitcoin wasn't made for this. You can have your genius act, you can have your stable coins, you can create as many digital tokens as you want, but you can't control people using Bitcoin. Bitcoin is freedom money. It's free from the state. And so we really need to get these guys out. There's other privacy software that's already built, right? There was already a fork off of the code from Keonne and Bill. I think it's called Ashigaru, I want to say. But it's like the software is going to continue, but if we just let them put people in jail like Keonne, that's when we've really lost our freedom. So
Yes.
we really have to fight for it.
And Tether, of course, the code, the ticker is USDT. We also have USDC, and
That's Circle. Mm-hmm.
yeah,
These are just private companies, and yeah, you can read between the lines. You've got Cantor Fitzgerald, who is Howard Lutnick, and then you have
yeah,
Tether, and then you have Jack Mallers. They're the creators of 21, and that is one of the big Bitcoin treasury companies. And
yeah,
Tether is one of the biggest holders of U.S. treasuries, right? So you can put the pieces
yes.
together and see that there's all these different power structures now that are trying to grapple with, how do we get people using these digital currencies that we can track versus Bitcoin.
And Tether, is third third on CoinGecko with a market cap of $187 billion, and USDC is a market cap of $75 billion. I mean, the only things ahead of Tether in market cap is Ethereum and Bitcoin. In fact, Tether is really kind of opening a pretty wide gap on XRP, which is the fourth here, and of course BNB, which is the Binance coin. So there's a lot. Yeah, there's.
Yeah, I think you'll see that continue. Stable coins. Look, it's a use case. It is a use case. It is there's governments with old money, with old paper money, right? And they're trying to figure out a way to bridge it over to digital. A stable coin allows them to do that. In my opinion, it's scary because it gives them surveillance capabilities that are, in my opinion, overreaching. It lets them go too far. And I think there needs to be a solution for everybody on the planet to be able to transact peer to peer. And if you go and you load up the Bitcoin white paper, you'll see that that's what Satoshi was trying to build, a peer-to-peer cashless digital cash system. So it's, we gotta make sure that we maintain that. It's very important.
Yes, of course. Jesse, I got to ask you, where do you think Bitcoin is going? I mean, what do you think of some of the accusations that have been made by Mr. Roger Ver, about Bitcoin being hijacked?
So you're just talking about the defensibility, I guess, of Bitcoin.
Well, really, the fact that Bitcoin has now been around for still 17 years. I mean, not quite 18 years.
Yeah, we're
And
in year
and it's
17.
real. And we're not buying. We're still not really buying cups of coffee with Bitcoin. We're not. We're not. I mean, 95% of businesses out there don't accept Bitcoin. So does it seem like maybe Bitcoin is now just becoming a not really a money, but just a speculative asset like stocks or bonds?
Yeah, good question. I am of the belief that Bitcoin will be the world reserve currency. I believe it will be the base layer for all money. I believe it is the only measuring stick for value in existence, the only one. So it is the single sole measuring stick for value in the galaxy. So we can be multiplanetary with this thing, and we will be. That's my belief. But I look at things like Elon Musk. I look at things in decades and centuries. I'm looking 50 years out, 100 years out. I don't know how long this is going to take. I have a daughter who's 5, and I like to think about when she's 50 or 60 or 70 or 100. And all I know is that Bitcoin has this fixed supply, and the dynamics that have been created by Satoshi have created the network effects such that I don't see it being able to go away at this point. If you asked me that question 5 years ago, I might have had a different answer, and it took me 10 years to really get full conviction in Bitcoin as something that I do think will never die. There are Bitcoin is predicated off of game theory, and I've studied game theory ad
Yeah,
nauseum because I told you my first company was a game company, and Satoshi
yeah,
Nakamoto was clearly a game theorist, which is quite interesting if you think about it. And the entire system is predicated off of perfectly aligned incentives, which is why the system is so bulletproof. And excuse me, if you really dig into the dynamics of the game theory, and then you look at the trajectory of the asset and the size of the asset at this point, it starts to become, it would take a black swan moment, which basically means the world's ending anyways. So if the world is ending anyways, then yes, Bitcoin will end, if we get hit by an asteroid or something. But
yeah,
as long as society is moving, at this point, it's risk mitigated because you have too many major players like Michael Saylor and all the people we just mentioned and people in administrations that now have a stake in this thing. And that is really the key at this point. And everybody's so worried now, where's it going to go because the price yesterday or the price tomorrow isn't where you want it to be. But if you just zoom out and you look at any other money and the history of money, and you look at any other currency, and you see how Bitcoin fixes the problem of inflation, it fixes the problem of debasement, it fixes the problem of, again, having money and state tied together. I just don't see how you can stop it. Now, you're going to have governments that try in every single way possible, and that's what they're trying to do with Keonne, right? The software was growing very quickly. It was doing a lot, and they wanted to stop that. And Keonne was very close. Keonne and Bill were going to release a decentralized version of the wallet. And for people that don't understand the tech as much, that just basically means that there wasn't going to be one source of the code that was running. They wouldn't be able to basically go to Keonne, take his computer and shut down the service. So again, you can't really kill Bitcoin, and you can't really kill the code that's being built on top of it like Keonne did. You can throw Keonne in jail, right? But the concept is already out, and other
yeah.
developers are already going to build it. So that's my long-winded answer. So take that, Roger Ver.
Yeah, Jesse, one thing having been, grown up a large portion of my life before people were connected to the internet, and I remember how that was and what happened. And really, it was, really it was America Online
Mm-hmm.
that drove everybody to get onto the internet, or at least drove more people onto the internet than anything else had. And then, I'm just wondering, when are we going to have an AOL for Bitcoin? Because I don't think we've had one yet.
Oh, I think it's happening, and I think we probably, looking back, we'll have a better idea of maybe what the equivalent, right, is of the
Yeah,
AOL moment. But I would look at things like Cash App. right? I think Jack Dorsey is really doing a great job, where you're just starting to see people that are now just all of a sudden, you've got all these merchants that are signing up for Bitcoin now. It's not talked about a lot. There's all these other news stories in the news cycle and all this other hype about all this other crap. But meanwhile, Bitcoin network is chugging along. Check the exahash lately. Check the hash rate. It's continuing to go up and to the right. And, it's just because the network is getting more and more usage. And, one of these days you're just going to wake up and people are just going to realize, you know what? It's just kind of easier to use Bitcoin for more things than it is to use cash. That day is coming. And believe me, it's going to be a waterfall. Like you're going to see, Cash App continue and Jack Dorsey continue to do things that give people more access. But then you're going to see other companies, you're going to see, look, I'm just going to throw out some names. These are hypothetical, right? But imagine when Amazon puts a buy with Bitcoin button on their site, right? Like imagine when, and you hear these examples. Steak and Shake is already accepting Bitcoin for all of their locations.
Yeah, that's a fairly big one. Yes.
So it's just going to keep happening, and eventually Bitcoin will have that its moment when it starts to take over the market share, and it will. It's just a matter of infrastructure build out, and the government's trying to slow people down like Keonne, but they can't stop everybody.
That's a good. I haven't heard Jack Dorsey's name in a while. Of course, he was the founder of Twitter, and a lot of us hate him because of all the censorship he promoted on Twitter.
Sure.
So I have to admit, I don't really trust what his intentions are. What do you think he's trying to do? Do you think he's maybe had an epiphany or something, or he wants to become one of the good guys, or what's going on with him?
I've had different thoughts about him and many people, right? If you look at anyone who's been bold in their career or made big, done big things, you look at what they do and you try to figure out what their motives are. I don't know Jack personally.
Yeah.
I have a certain appreciation for entrepreneurs because I'm an entrepreneur myself. And if you put yourself out there and you take the risks, I think it's the hardest job on the planet, and you get no love and people misunderstand you. And the more you get out on the fringe as an entrepreneur and you're trying to work with technology that people don't understand or that are very, very difficult to control, or, Jack's, when you build Twitter or you're building a social network, you're taking on a massive responsibility because now you're playing with free speech. Now you're playing with communication and you're playing with language. That's a protocol, right? So is money. Money is a protocol. And so when you create Square, you're playing with a protocol. And so I give these guys tremendous respect for being brave enough to go and do these things. Look, if I was Jack and I was running Twitter, and I had governments breathing down my neck and telling me I had to censor people and do this and that, how would I behave? I don't know. I like to think that I would say, F you, government. I'm going to keep my platform open and I'm not going to do any censorship. Not everybody did that during the COVID era and all this craziness was happening, and Zuckerberg caved in and Jack caved in, and I think they were on the wrong side of history for that, Now, do I just like throw anybody out like that and say, no, they have no redeeming qualities? No, I don't do that. So I like Jack. I like what he's built. I really got angry with Twitter like everybody else. I don't know what the heck was going on with him or with Twitter or the entire world. I still think we need to do a lot of cleaning up. I think we have major problems with freedom of speech, with surveillance. And yeah, I mean, this Keonne case is a major indicator that we still have these problems. All that being said, seeing what Jack is doing lately, I think he's on the right path. Yeah, I think he gets it now. I think he fully understands what Bitcoin is. He seems to be fairly focused on that, which I love. I have my theories about Jack's part in this whole story. I actually think that Jack probably was very close to Satoshi, or there's a lot of information about Jack that you can look back at. It's super interesting. And anybody who was part of the PayPal mafia, whether you look at Elon, Jack, You look at any of the cypherpunks, any of these people that were looking at money, looking at code. I just have respect for them. So I'm looking forward to seeing what else Jack does. And he's been an amazing Bitcoiner, and he's continuing to show that he truly cares about Bitcoin as freedom money. And to me, that makes him one of the good guys right now.
Well, that's good. Yeah, I'm always hoping these people are out there fighting the good fights.
I hope so.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think two of the biggest obstacles for Bitcoin adoption are it's still very easy to lose it, and and the transaction costs are still quite high. I mean, I can when you can buy, I can buy $10 million worth of Exxon stock, and my fee still might be $20. I can't buy that much Bitcoin for with a $20 fee.
Yeah, you just have to understand that the infrastructure is so early right now. Yeah. It's very clunky, it's expensive, it's slow. And, people look at that and go, see, it's never going to work. And I look at that and say, well, you're an idiot because you're looking at just an early market. It's just a nascent market. Duh. Like, if you understand markets, if you look at anything, the mobile phone, the internet, and you look at the growth trajectory of it, and it's going to take multiple decades for this thing to develop. And especially when you have governments that are suppressing it and putting people like Keonne's trying to build out the infrastructure. What happens? They throw them in jail.
Yeah.
So it's going to slow down that growth curve. But to me, it's just laughable when people are like, oh yeah, it's slow, or, it costs a lot of money. Of course it does. It's a $2 trillion market right now. It has, when you understand it has room to grow over 100x, it could grow 100x, 200x, it could grow 500x. And I can say that because they're going to print the US dollar into oblivion.
Yes.
So if you understand economics and you understand that we have an infinite money printer, then you understand that Bitcoin can literally go up forever. And, according to in fiat terms, in US dollar terms, Bitcoin can go up forever as the US dollar erodes. And once you understand that a $2 trillion market, $1 to $2 trillion market cap is tiny, right? It's like a size of a smaller than company right now. So once Bitcoin gets up to 10 trillion, 20 trillion, 50 trillion, 100 trillion, the economies of scale start to come in, the infrastructure starts to come in. And I believe in the next, let's call it 2 years, I think the usability, the UI UX for Bitcoin is going to improve. And I think the market share is going to improve. And I think we're going to see a massive uptick in the market share. So I wouldn't be surprised. I don't really do predictions or anything like that, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a massive, if we had a really massive year here in 2026.
Well, I think there are only about 7 or 8 currencies out there that have a higher market cap than Bitcoin. I mean, for example, there are more US dollars. The market capitalization of all the US dollars is more than Bitcoin. But for example, the market, for example, all the Bitcoin in the world is worth more than all the Russian rubles in the world.
Yeah, you can look up all the different money in the world, and there's one that sort of floats around the internet that I like, and it just shows, Bitcoin as this like little dot on the big, the big graph of all the money, because you have things like the real estate market, right? Just real estate, like the amount of value in homes and buildings, I think is something like $300 trillion. It's probably more now, right? You have gold, which has been, 30, $40 trillion market cap. Silver now is, so the precious metals, there's value there. There's art. So all the different value in the world, it's over a quadrillion. Which is just a massive number that you can't even really get your head around.
True.
And Bitcoin is just sitting here at 1 to 2 trillion, right? So when you understand that and you understand the technology, then it's very hard to not see this thing, like a 10x for me is so obvious. People are like, oh, is it going to hit $1 million? I'm like, well, that's so obvious at this point. It's just a matter of time. We just don't know when. We know it will. We just don't know when that's going to happen.
Yeah, well, because of course, I don't know how much longer the dollar is going to last anyway. This is not financial advice. This is not legal advice. Not to mention, that real estate is one thing that will always have value, though. I mean, we may not necessarily say that about some of the other things, but everybody's got to have a home. everybody's got to have, wants to have land so they can grow food, if nothing else.
Well, it needs to get revalued, right? It's overvalued right now because people have been holding their money in real estate as a reserve. They're putting their money there because they know the U.S. dollar is decaying, and so they just park their value into an empty house that they're not even living in, right? This is a massive problem. This is why the young generations can't afford a home, because you have people using homes as vehicles to hold their assets as a reserve. And that's not what a home is for. A home is for living in. A home has utility. And this is to me, one of the biggest discussions around Bitcoin that frustrates me a little bit, but I understand why people have a hard time. You have to kind of dig into the concepts a little bit, but Bitcoin is just money. It's nothing else. That's what makes it the best money, because it is nothing else. A house is a house, right? So it shouldn't be money. A house is a house. It's been used as money, as a place to store money, because we have bad money, right? The US dollar is bad. It's not good money. So I'm going to put my money into this house thing, even though a house isn't money. A house is a house. I want to live in the house. So I think what's going to happen is you're going to see everything get repriced. Everything's going to get repriced in terms of Bitcoin. And that's when you talk about like the Bitcoin standard, people like Saifedean Ammous, who wrote the Bitcoin standard. We're talking, or Jeff Booth, right? We're talking about things that are denominated in Bitcoin terms, because if you understand markets, Adam Smith, the free market, you understand that it creates a deflationary situation where prices actually start to come down. So right now, houses are inflating because the US dollar is worth crap, and it keeps getting worth less and less and less and less, right? So it takes more and more and more dollars to buy the same house. So I think Bitcoin is going to help reprice everything in this way. I think it's going to allow people to understand the true value of assets, including homes, or apples, or comic books, or whatever the hell you want, right? You'll just know that in Bitcoin terms, it is the actual true market value of what that thing should be worth. And I think people will just start holding everything in Bitcoin, and they'll sell if you got 4 houses, right? And you got to do maintenance on them, and you've got all these repairs, and you got to have a manager. Screw that. Just sell that, hold it in Bitcoin, and now somebody got a house, and now you're holding Bitcoin, and your Bitcoin is stable, and you don't have to do anything with it. So it's going to be very interesting to see the redistribution of value, but Bitcoin will naturally redistribute value in the most economic and efficient way.
Yeah, it's really remarkable. I think of all the economic distortions that we've had since 1971. I wonder how history would have been different. But so from there, what are some countries that you think are havens for crypto projects, if not America? I mean, if you could live anywhere and do your crypto projects anywhere, where would you do them?
So I'm no longer really. So I look at crypto and Bitcoin as two different things. There's Bitcoin and there's crypto. Crypto to me is a whole different market. So I'm just going to put that to the side for a second, and I'll answer the question for Bitcoin. And the place that I'm looking at right now that I love is El Salvador. And I love El Salvador because you have Nayib Bukele, who's a pro Bitcoin leader. He was into Bitcoin before he was elected into office, and he has integrated Bitcoin into the entire system of the country. They have a strategic Bitcoin reserve. They stack Bitcoin, I believe, daily, I think is the model. And I was just there. I was invited, very humbled to be a special guest at the Bitcoin conference that happened in November in El Salvador. And I didn't get to speak directly to Bukele, but I was basically speaking to kind of everybody in the inner circles. And I was part of the behind the scenes crew. So I was talking to the speakers, and I could just see a lot of the things that are happening in the country there. And I also was talking to the locals. I took a lot of Ubers and walked around, and that's a country to me that is on the right track. And if you're an American, you got to wake up. There's so many Americans are isolated at this point, which is what the government wants. They don't want you to know what's going on in other countries. And, my mom, who's a boomer, I told her I was visiting El Salvador, and she freaked out, and she was concerned for my life. And I understand that, because El Salvador was one of the most dangerous places in the world just 5 years ago, really 5-6 years ago. But you can see the power of Bitcoin if you actually
Yes.
get on a plane and you actually go and you get off the plane and you walk around in El Salvador, and you're going to start to realize, wow, there are places right here in El Salvador that are far nicer than the United States of America, than even the nicest cities in America. I am not kidding you. And people just don't believe it, Chris. They're just like, no, 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 no. It's still third world over there. We're first world over here. It's changing. The world is changing. So, El Salvador is a good place. You can kind of look around for different friendly regions. Singapore, I used to go there a lot. Token 2049 is a great, if you want to start talking sort of on the crypto side of things, you've got places like Singapore. Obviously, there's places like Cayman Islands and other places where you can look at different things for setting up structures for companies that might have a little bit better regulatory environment, what have you. So the landscape's pretty interesting. There's different countries that are trying to adopt it faster, like El Salvador, and trying to move on with and adopt the technology. And then there's countries like the United States that are, major players, obviously the world power, kind of with the world reserve currency, that are trying to figure out how to move forward, but they're entrenched. They're entrenched in the old world, and they've got their hands on all these different things that they can't, you know what I mean? Like the U.S. is kind of stuck, in my opinion, because they have to support the U.S. dollar, right? They can't just say, okay, we're done. We're done with the U.S. dollar. But other countries, they might be able to adopt Bitcoin faster. A place like El Salvador. El Salvador was already running on the dollar, but they're not beholden to it, right? So they can kind of do whatever they want. So that's my answer. But it's always developing. It's always changing, and I'll just close out by saying that's one of the beauties of Bitcoin, is that it's borderless, right? So you as a person, you can look at different places in the world and say to yourself, well, maybe this is a place that I want to be, because they're going to be more friendly and have a kind of future that I want to be living in, versus maybe a surveillance state. Like if you're somewhere in Europe right now, you might want to be thinking about moving somewhere else.
Western Europe is finished. Yeah. I mean, I was down in El Salvador in 2022, and I certainly got a sense of optimism down there. Not to mention, it was only 3 hours from DFW airport, which is about the same time as it takes to fly to LA. So
I was impressed. By it. I'll be there more. I'm talking to a lot of people. I've got some initiatives that I'm working on. So, but it's an interesting.
Uber was still about $3 or $4 to get around town too.
Yep.
Traffic in San Salvador is, oh God,
Traffic's bad.
Might be the worst traffic city I've ever been to. Yeah. But there was some optimism there, and it seemed like, and they've got a volcano there, so they've got cheap energy.
Yep. Then they're utilizing it. They're gonna have volcano powered, Bitcoin. How cool is that?
Yeah, small countries tend to rise and fall faster. So I really hope it all works out. So you said you had an hour. So, well, you don't have anything else to say, do you?
Well, let's just wrap by coming back to the topic. I think that's on the top of my mind, which is Keonne and Bill and the Samourai Wallet case, and I think that's why you reached out to me.
Yes.
It's as we're recording this, it's the second day of January. I don't know when you're going to put it out. Hopefully, I don't know what your lead time looks like for getting it out, but we're early in the year, right? And it's 2026 now. Everybody sort of has a mental switch, right? We kind of do our reset, and everyone kind of gets back into work, and we all have our goals for the year. And I think in 2026, it's the 250th anniversary of America. We need to make sure that we get Keonne and Bill out. If we're talking about 250 years of quote unquote freedom, because we've got citizens that are sitting behind bars right now that are trying to push the country forward and trying to build technology that's going to help you and help me. And we really just can't let the government walk all over us like
Yes.
that. They work for us, okay? And I want I'm going to look into the camera on this one. Every American and really anybody out there, just remember, these governments, they're supposed to work for us. So I think that's going to be a big focus for 2026. I'm hopeful that DJT is going to pardon these guys. And I also think it's going to be a good year for Bitcoin in general. I think that things have been suppressed. I think that the governments have been moving a little slow trying to figure out how to do all this. And I think 2026 is going to be the year of implementation. So thanks for having me on, and really appreciate you and all the work that you're doing. And hopefully we can all have a positive year.
Yes, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, go buy my novel Escape from the Village, check out my Substack, and people are giving me money at buymeacoffee.com. Thank you, Jesse Tevelow. This has been a good show. I'm Chris Baker, and we're out. Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to the Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Support the forum. Go to buymeacoffee.com/fountainheadforum. Thank you.